now.
Perfect.
There you go.
Got it.
Yeah, that becomes a lot easier
Okay.
to manage. And what I'll do is I'll put it on YouTube, but as a private YouTube that only you will be able to get to.
Perfect.
Okay. So the first question you're going to ask, are you looking for something that you personally are going to live in as your primary residence?
Okay.
Is it for you? Is it for your brother? Is it for your mother? Whatever. Is it an investment you're looking for, not a primary residence? Or are you looking for a second vacation home? Long Island, that's a big thing. So
Okay.
you need to know, and from a beginner's point of view, I want you to separate the people who need some place to live from the people who are not going to move into that place permanently. So
Right.
whether they're using it as a vacation home or they're using it as an investment, 99% of those people don't have to buy,
Okay.
right? You have a home, you're living in it. Now you want a second home. If you found the right thing, you would buy it. But if you don't find the right thing, you don't have to buy.
Right. You're not in a
You're looking for an investment. If the numbers work, you would think about buying it. But
okay.
in this market, making numbers work is almost impossible. So the question is, how are you going to deal with these? And in the beginning, I would rather you not try to work with people who need just vacation homes or just investments. If you want to make investors part of your business plan, we will have to have a whole separate training on how to deal with investors.
Okay.
So everything we say from here on in, the person said, yes, it's for me.
Primary residence. Okay.
Primary residence. Okay. Then you're going to ask them, do they own a house now or are they renting?
Mm-hmm.
Very important, because 80% of people who own houses have to sell them before they can buy their next house.
And would that be considered a swing mortgage, like swinging from one into another?
That doesn't really exist. If you have enough equity and you're buying something that matches the equity you could draw out of your present house, you could pull equity out, buy the next thing, and then either keep or sell what you have. But you understand that when you go to a mortgage person and you have a house that you're living in that has a mortgage, the mortgage company will consider the next house, even though you say you're going to live in it, they consider it an investment.
Right.
So number one, you have to put more money down than you would if you were going to live there. Number two, you're going to get a higher interest rate because you're not living there.
Oh, so investment properties require more money down and a higher interest rate.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Now, people think, well, I'll just get another mortgage while I have a mortgage. And for most people, they're not in the right financial situation to do that. But if they go to their mortgage company and they show you a piece of paper that says they can buy the next house without selling their house, great. It's just, you're going to find that less than 1 out of 10 people is going to have that.
Okay.
Now, there are people that, live in a house, have very big equity in it, and have $1 million in the bank. And they want to go buy something for $700,000. If they show you the $1 million in the bank, you don't care about the other house or the mortgage.
Right.
Cash is a whole different story. But we need to know where their situation is. And if they don't own a house and are renting, do they have a lease? Because I'll give you an example. Several years ago, it was March, and I was in an open house with an agent. Usually when an agent does their first open house, I do it with them. So this young couple came in and they looked very on spot, very with it, very engaging, and very motivated. So I asked them, do you own a house or are you renting now? And they said, well, we're renting. I said, do you have a lease? Yes. When is the lease up? December. Okay, so can you break that lease before December? No. Well, you understand in March, if you found a house, there's no homeowner that's going to wait till December to close.
Right.
People don't understand. It's our job to educate them. If we don't ask the right question, shame on us. And
Right.
we're going to waste a lot of time with somebody who's going to make an offer and then ask the owner to close in January when it's only April, and we're going to have egg in our face.
Okay, that makes sense. Typically, like you can break rental leases
That
with
depends on where you're renting.
paying.
You know, you get one of these developments by Fairfield, no way.
Okay. I
You know,
see.
if you're from a private place, maybe. Depends on your relationship to the landlord. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But these people said specifically that they couldn't break their lease.
Okay. Important.
Okay, yes, it is important. Okay, now the next question is all important. Are you working with a real estate agent?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, people are not very respectful of the fact that we earn our living doing this.
Right.
They think it's a hobby that we like to just drive people around to houses. You know, and I'll give you an extreme example. A lady called the front desk and she said, I need to see this listing. It was one of our listings. And the admin is trained to ask, do you have an agent?
Right.
And she said, yes, I have an agent, but I don't want to bother him this weekend. I want somebody else to show it to me. Now, that person who showed that lady that house, what kind of commission were they going to earn?
Nothing, right?
Zero.
I mean, how does that work if you are listing the home and she has another agent and say she likes the home, say she wants to buy this home now?
The agent's going to make the offer, not you.
How do they take your home from you if you're listing it?
Well, if you're the listing agent, that's fine. But that's not the point. The point is she wasn't calling for a listing agent. She was calling for an agent to show her somebody else's listing.
Jeez. All right. I see.
Yeah. So it's a problem that we have to cut short, and we have to make sure that they don't lie to us, that, you know, they have their cousin who's an agent and that person is waiting in the wings till this person finds what they're looking for and then swoops in and makes an offer. Now,
So
the way
come in and make an offer to the owner, or how do
to the listing agent.
The listing agent.
Yeah. Somebody comes to you and say, I want to buy a house in Westbury. And you go through the whole thing and you start showing them houses, and then they find a house they like and they say, that's great. Then you find out, they call you the next day, oh, you know, my cousin is a real estate agent. They made the offer for us.
That's horrible.
Yes. But we have to protect ourselves from that. Now, asking this question starts the protection, but we go way beyond that because we're going to get a contract signed with each buyer.
Okay. Is this the exclusive right to sell or the exclusive
right to represent?
Right. Okay. Because there's two different ones, as I recall. One is exclusive to represent and one is an agency, exclusive agency.
Well, when you're a listing agent, you have the exclusive right to market the home. Okay. When you take a buyer.
I'm so sorry. So in that, even if the seller finds a buyer on their own, you're still entitled to the commission, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. But on the buyer side, you as an agent will need to protect yourself by having the buyer sign a contract that guarantees your commission.
Okay.
And no tester is going to sign that. And no person who has somebody else that wants to make an offer for them is going to sign.
Ah, good to know. So do you do that in the first, before you even put them the home, right?
No, we're not. Before we actually look at homes, but we have several steps before that.
Okay.
We built a whole system that takes one step. The phone call is one step.
Okay.
We're not finished with the questions, but I'll give you an overview of the steps. So first step is the phone call. If they get through the phone call successfully, you're going to ask them to show you their pre-approval. If they don't have one, you're going to recommend 2 mortgage people for them to call. And you're going to tell them you can help them when you get a copy of their pre-approval, not before. And then you're going to set up a Zoom call where you're going to show them houses virtually to see what they like and don't like, and if they're being realistic about the market. And if that's correct, then you're going to have them sign a contract, and then you're actually going to show them physical houses.
I see. Okay. Beautiful.
So as I said, it's a system, and if you follow it and you follow it with everybody, first of all, you're protecting yourself. Second of all, you're acting professionally. And third of all, you can never go astray of fair housing.
Perfect. Okay. I love it.
Okay. So if they asked you about a particular house, they want to see this particular house. This is where we're concerned that they actually might have another agent in the wings.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, well, can I show you other houses besides this house that would be similar to it? And if they say no, that's a big red flag.
Okay.
Now, remember, I said there's a system. You're going to do this. You're going to ask for the pre-approval. After the pre-approval, you're going to do the Zoom call. After the Zoom call, you're going to get the contract signed. After the contract signed, you're going to show them houses.
Right.
Somebody says, well, I don't want to do that. I just want you to show me a house. What are you going to say to them?
Well, inform them that we have a system in place.
Yes. Here's the phrase. That's not the way I work.
Okay.
I have a system that's very successful for me getting people into houses that they want.
Okay.
But we need to follow the system. And if you'd rather not follow the system, I'm not the agent for you.
Okay.
You don't need everybody to be your client. You need good clients that you can have a relationship with past closing.
Right. The right clients.
Correct. Correct. So to build your business, you have to be a little picky, and the system lends itself to working with people who are going to cooperate with you, because it is a pretty straightforward system and you don't let any exceptions through. They're going to have to say, this is the way it's going to be.
Right. Okay.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to ask 3 more questions, and then we're going to scare them. So after we know if they'll let us show other houses, if they ask for a particular house, if they just ask, I'm looking for a house in Westbury, that's fine. Then we're going to ask them, is Westbury the only town you're interested in?
Okay.
Okay. And you can mention other towns. Are you interested in Levittown or Hicksville or Wantor or Jericho? Just like that. We don't care what they're interested in, but what they're interested in and why they're interested in it speaks to their motivation. So if they say, well, you know, I need to be in Westbury East Meadow Schools because my husband is in the fire department there, and that's where we have our sphere of influence, that's a good reason.
Right.
Okay. You get somebody that says, well, you know, Westbury might work, or maybe Mineola, or maybe we should go to Melville.
Right. They're everywhere.
That's a buyer that's not ready to buy.
Okay.
That's a buyer that'll drive you crazy. And maybe you'll do one Zoom call with them, but you're not going to take them to houses in Mineola, Westbury, Hicksville, and Melville.
You know.
No.
Have you running around the whole county? Okay.
Yeah, and it just means they're not ready to buy because they haven't figured it out. And everybody has a reason for what they're doing. And people who don't have strong reasons for doing something end up not doing it.
Okay.
So we have to figure out, and location is often tied to the reason that they're moving. You know, so we don't have to be too nosy, but we're going to find out, because of where the area that they picked in, what that's all about and why it's so important to them. And then that becomes part of the motivation you can use to move them to a purchase.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. Second thing is you have to explain the importance of a real pre-approval. What do I mean by real pre-approval? There are 3 levels of getting approved. The first level I call pre-qualification, which means you went to some website or spent 5 minutes on the phone with a mortgage person. He asked you what you made and he ran your credit and he gave you a number. And that piece of paper is worthless.
Yeah.
Okay. You go to the next step and you actually give the mortgage person your documents, your W-2s, your pay stubs, et cetera, all the financials they need to know what your monthly budget can be, considering the price of the house, the interest rate, and the taxes. That's a real pre-approval.
Okay. That's what we want.
That's what we want. But we can go one step further, because there are certain banks that will send that file of documents to the underwriting department before the person finds the house. So normally an underwriter looks at a file after the house is identified and the contract's done. That's good for the bank, but not good for the buyer. Because a buyer could have a pre-approval and the bank might not give them the money. The person who processes the pre-approval is a salesman selling mortgages. The person who's the underwriter is protecting the bank from dangerous loans. And if something happens in the underwriting process that pulls up a fact that's not favorable to the bank, even though that person has a pre-approval, they will not be approved.
Okay.
So it is very important that, first of all, we confirm that the bank has their documents. And secondly, we ask if the underwriting department can look at the file.
So they're really the ones that determine if they want to move forward in lending the money.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Exactly. People
That's
think that because they have a pre-approval that they're definitely going to get the loan. No, that's not true. So I'll give you a good example. 15, 16 years ago, I refinanced my mortgage. Okay. I had been paying the mortgage for 10 years, never missed a payment, nothing. My credit is good. I have a good job. I have a good income. I'm using the same bank that I've been paying for 10 years, and they took 2 months to approve me.
Woo.
And they asked me all kinds of stupid questions. Like, why is this address on your records? Well, that's where I lived when I was 16 years old. What's the difference about really? So the problem is a buyer finds a house that they like. They get an accepted offer. They go through home inspection. They get under contract. And now the bank tortures them for 2 months, asking them for this piece of paper and why is that and that. I try to spare my buyers of that. And I encourage them to work with a bank that will send the file to underwriting. Because if we get a conditional approval commitment from the underwriting department, they're saying they're not going to refuse the buyer. Now, the only 2 conditions to full commitment are a contract and an appraisal that matches the contract price.
Okay.
So I did this way back when I bought my first house. I went to Wells Fargo, and they had what's called a priority buyer letter. What the priority buyer letter was, They sent the file to underwriting, and then you had 60 days to buy a house, and they would not refuse your loan if the loan was within, the price of the house was within the loan amount and the appraisal came in.
Okay.
So when I made the offer, there were 5 other offers on the house. But the owner knew what a priority buyer letter meant.
Ah,
And he knew it was as good as cash because the bank can't refuse me.
right. Whereas everyone else did not have a guarantee.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So this is why we want to the mortgage process is more complicated than most people think. And that they think that a pre-qualification is any good at all. And they think that pre-approval is all they can get. That's not doing them a favor. The other thing is, because the market is so difficult, we have to have the best tools when we're negotiating for our client to get them the house.
Mhm.
And if we can get them that pre-commitment conditioned only on the contract and the appraisal, we can go to the head of the class of all the other pre-approvals. Now, we're still going to be beaten by cash, but really, if everything all being equal, the owner, can consider our offer cash.
Are there a lot of cash buyers? Is that a thing?
Yes. Yes. It's scary.
It
Cash
is.
buyers in the last year has doubled in the market.
Interesting.
You know why? Because any house, at least in the spring, now it's calmed down a little bit, but any house would get at least 10 offers.
Mm-hmm.
And what people were doing was they were digging up cash from wherever they could get it. And they were making cash offers. And then after they closed on the house, they refinanced and they paid off whoever they got the money from.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That makes sense. I didn't even think about that. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is there's a lot of cash floating around Long Island. There are a lot of businesses that are more cash businesses and whatever. And you'd be surprised at how much cash is out there in the real estate market. So I think it might be up to like 30% of offers are cash.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was a thing that you could really do anymore. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some people can and some people can't, but it's one of the ways around the problem with this market. The problem with this market is the inventory is almost non-existent. And there are a ton of buyers that have a lot of buying power because interest rates are the lowest they've ever been.
Right. And we don't have a lot of inventory in homes, right?
No, and it's not likely to change this year.
Oh boy.
It's likely to change next year, but it's not likely to change this year. One of the problems is when you look at the natural progression of inventory through a year, the lowest inventory is normally December and January. And then it picks up a little in February, gets stronger in March. April, May, and June are the big inventory building months. And then June or July, the inventory naturally starts to decline just because of the sales cycle and the way people think about the spring as the selling season.
Okay. And this is consistent.
Consistent year after year, doesn't matter what market. So now
Okay.
we're in a market with low inventory and we're in almost August. There's no way we can get more inventory. We're not going to have more inventory in December than we had in July.
Right. Okay.
Just from the natural course of things. So that's why I say it can't change this year, but hopefully by next year, it will change a little bit. I think interest rates will normalize a little bit. We'll start getting the foreclosures coming on the market, which will boost the amount of inventory that's there. And, people who were reticent this year because of COVID should be past that by next spring.
God willing. Okay.
God willing is right. Okay, so there's one more question we have to ask before we scare them. So the last question we want to ask is, what condition house are you looking for? Are you looking for completely move in? I just pack my bags and move in? Am I willing to do a little work? Pull up rugs, sand floors, do some painting? Or am I looking for a project? Am I looking like an investor and I want the worst house in the best neighborhood and I'm going to get equity by bringing it up to market conditions? Most people are not in the third one.
Right. They want it ready to go.
Way too many people are in the first one. The more the buyer can move down towards doing work, the more choices they're going to have and the less competition they're going to have. But one of the things we have to understand is we're not buying the house, and we can't tell somebody they should be doing work when they don't want to.
Right.
All we have to do is explain to them the negatives to actually looking for a house that everybody else is looking for.
Good point.
So some people will change their mind and soften, and other people will say, no, I'm putting all my money in the house. I'm not going to have any money for renovation. I have a busy life. I don't want to go through that.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, on the lower rung, where you're looking for the worst house in the best neighborhood, one of the tools we can use that can be very helpful to that kind of buyer if they don't have all cash is what's called a renovation loan. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
So the person basically gets money for the house plus the money for the renovation, and it's all in one mortgage.
Are those hard to get, would you say?
No, they're easy to get. Number one, there's a little bit more paperwork. Number two, you have to use the right mortgage person who knows the product. And number three, you're going to pay a slightly more interest rate.
Okay.
But the cost of taking $40,000 or $50,000 out of your bank account versus letting the bank,
Right.
mortgage 80% of that, that's a financial decision that somebody should sit down with their accountant about. But we as agents should know about it because it is a good tool for the person who's thinking like an investor and is not buying cash.
And we can suggest that.
We certainly can. We
Okay.
can for somebody who's doing fix up, whether it's major or minor. Let's say you get a house, everything's good but the kitchen. Kitchen hasn't been done in 30 years. House is clean, the neat, there's nothing broken, the kitchen works, but obviously you're buying a house, you're not going to leave the kitchen like that.
Right.
So you want to put 40,000 into a kitchen and the house is 500,000 and you get a mortgage for 540. And then the way it normally works is you have to find a contractor who's willing to work with the bank on the renovation loan because the bank does not put any money up front.
I see.
So what happens is normally,
once it's completed, they get paid for their service.
well, they get paid in stages, usually in thirds.
Okay.
So after a third of the work is done, they get a third of the money. After 2/3 of the work is done, they get 2/3 of the money. And then when it's completed and inspected by the new appraiser from the bank, they get the final payment.
That makes sense.
So some contractors will do it and others won't. You have to find one that's used to that kind of cash flow. And usually they're going to be a little bit more expensive because they're putting money out. Now, the good news is because they know it's in your mortgage, they know they're going to get paid. Where if they're working with somebody else who doesn't have it in their mortgage and working with the bank, well, who knows that person's even going to pay me?
Right.
So there is an advantage to the contractor because he's named in the contract with the bank. And that's the only person who can do the work. And he's authorized to get payment in thirds.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, not yet.
Okay. So now we get to the part that I have not done until this year. I'm going to try to scare the buyer into not buying a house now. Because any buyer who I can talk out of buying a house is never going to be a buyer who's going to get to the finish line.
Ah, good point.
Okay. So I have to explain to a buyer, and this is just explanation. The first thing, we try to ask questions. Everything in this survey that we talked about so far were questions we asked them about working with an agent. Do they own or they rent? Do they have a pre-approval? What locations? What condition? They're all questions. So the question here is, do you understand what kind of market it is in for buyers? Do you understand that the listing price is the starting price for offers? Do you understand that you're going to pay over list price? And do you understand that when you pay over list price, the appraisal might not come in? So you're looking for a $600,000 house, and you find a house at 550 and you offer 605 and you get an accepted offer and you get under contract, and then the appraisal comes in and says it's only worth 585.
So the bank is only going to give you what it's worth. So you got to find the rest of that money.
Correct.
Market right now.
So first of all, buyers who have 5% down or less cannot be in this market.
No.
Does not work. Buyers who don't have closing costs and at least 10% down, they can't be in this market. Okay? And the buyer has to, number one, have the fortitude to make offers on multiple houses until they get one. And they have to understand when they do win the bid, that bid is going to be over asking and probably over appraisal.
Okay.
So what I usually do is say, sit down and talk about it. Talk to your family, talk to your lawyer. Make a decision that this is a market you want to get in right now, or wait. And I'm fine with either one because I can sell you a house next year too.
Okay.
It doesn't pay to start with a buyer who's not going to be able to finish the job.
No, makes sense. It's wasting time.
Yes. And if you're not very firm about how bad the market is for buyers, you're not doing your buyer any justice.
Okay. Now, would you say prior to COVID, it was like this? Is this just, it's new? It's a new thing, right?
Wasn't even this way last year.
All right. I'm learning during an interesting time.
Yeah, it is a very interesting time. But the good news is, by the time you actually really get into the market next spring, it will be a different market.
Okay.
This cannot continue. It just doesn't work. Right. I've been this is my 20th year in the industry. Never, ever seen a market like this. I have somebody in my office who's 60 years in real estate. He's never seen a market like this.
Wow.
It is so unusual. Usually in a normal year, like 5% of offers will be over asking. 5 to 7%, that's the top. We're at 30 to 40% of offers over asking. And the asking isn't low. It's not like we're starting with a low base. We're starting with a number. I mean, I don't know you know much about Hicksville. There's a place in Hicksville called Hillside Terrace. I was an agent there. The houses back then, 20 years ago, sold for 300 to 350. Before COVID, they sold for 450 to 500. These people just bought a ranch in that same neighborhood for 600. 100,000 more than they would have paid pre-COVID.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. All right.
It doesn't make any sense, but this is the way it is. Now, interest rates have never been this low.
So maybe that's why people are jumping on it despite the
Well,
increase.
part of the thing is people work not with the amount of house they're buying. They don't look at $600,000 house. They look at, well, we're putting 20% down. What's our monthly bill going to be?
Right.
And if our mortgage, interest, and taxes are under $3,000 and we're getting a house, we can't rent a house for $3,000.
So true. Okay.
Right? So that's the way it works. Rents aren't any better. Rentals are just as scarce as sales are, and they're through the roof, so any way you turn, it's really not a good time for movement. And buyers have to know what they're up against before you lead them through it.
Okay. Makes sense.
So far, so good. Any questions so far?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. So the next step is to see the pre-approval if they have one. And if they don't have a pre-approval, ask them to talk to a mortgage person they trust, and you'll have the names of a couple of mortgage people that you could give them.
Okay. And that is
we have some, what's that?
We're allowed to recommend mortgage individuals for them to work with.
Yeah, well, what I like are local mortgage companies that are not the big Chases and Citibanks and even Bethpage Federal Credit.
Okay.
Those tend to be very difficult to work with, and almost all of those will not give you a file that goes to the underwriter.
Okay.
You need a more local company that's smaller and has a better connection between the mortgage person, the underwriter, and the appraiser.
Okay.
So those are the kind of companies we're going to recommend, because that is what makes sense,
Yeah.
So I have a couple. When we get to that point, I can give you a couple of names. One of the things you're going to want to do is build a team of vendors. You're going to want to have your preferred mortgage people. You're going to have your preferred real estate lawyers. You're going to have your preferred home inspectors. And then eventually you'll extend that to your preferred handyman, your preferred clean out person, your preferred tag sale person, all the things that would be involved in moving into a new house.
Okay.
It's a very good service that you can provide your clients if you can give them people that they can trust to get the job done properly at a reasonable rate.
Okay.
So far, so good?
Yep.
Okay, so we need to see that pre-approval. And if they send us a piece of paper, we're going to call the mortgage person and make sure that they have documents.
Right. Okay.
Because the wording on some mortgage pre-approvals don't tell whether the documents are there or not.
And we need to make sure they're going to be sent to the underwriter.
Well, we're going to ask that. I mean, one of the things is we can't insist on it. We advise our clients that this is a better thing to do. You have to understand that even people that are relatively close to you might have relationships with mortgage people or lawyers that they want to use, even if it's not the best choice.
Right.
So you get people who say, well, I've been banking at Chase for 30 years. I want to go to them for the mortgage. I think it's a mistake, but I can't stop you from doing it. What I'm going to ask you to do is talk to my mortgage person after you talk to Chase, get a comparison of rates, and have my mortgage person look at the file as well, so that if Chase gives you a hard time, I have somebody I know who says they can do your mortgage.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
We had a sale 2 years ago, and it wasn't my sale, it was my listing, but it was an agent in the office who brought the buyer, and they insisted on Chase. And we found out later it was because their best friend was the mortgage broker. Okay. And we got to the point where we were supposed to close the on or about date, and Chase was still dragging their feet. And the only way we got Chase to close the loan was to have the buyer talk to TD Bank. Because this agent who was selling the house had somebody at TD Bank that could do it quickly if they needed to. And then as soon as Chase found out that TD Bank was going to take over the loan, voila, the pre-approval came through.
Wow.
But it's not good to do it that way because we had a pretty upset seller who was concerned that this person wasn't going to perform within the contract time.
Right.
So
Okay.
it was during COVID, and I was a little more lax than I would have been if I had more choices. But this person made the offer just before lockdown.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to get somebody to replace them until lockdown was over, which turned out to be 3 months. So we went with what we had, and then we had to use the thing of actually getting TD Bank to get involved so that they could jump in if Chase didn't perform.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, some people are just partial for, stupid reasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, their best friend being a mortgage person, I understand you want to use them, but they're working for the wrong company, and it's just going to cause you aggravation. And do you want to jeopardize your friendship when he can't do what he says he can do? That's the best question to ask.
Yeah.
And then normally to get somebody else in there early, concurrent with Chase, so that after 4 or 5 weeks that Chase hasn't performed, this other person could just step right in because they have all the information already.
Right. Here. Okay, that makes sense. Here, write down. Paper. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So if we've gotten through all these questions well, and we've gotten through the part where we scared them and they still want to go ahead, and we've gotten a full pre-approval, now we're ready for the next step, which I recommend is a Zoom call. And why do I want a Zoom call? Is because buyers don't know what they really want until they see it. And it's much more convenient. We did this during the post lockdown when everything was very tight for showing and you had to go through hoops to get a showing. We did this to save a lot of time because it was very hard to get in and show houses, and to show them virtually was easier. But I learned from that experience that showing virtually was going to make a lot more sense because you got a lot of questions answered about what they were looking for without actually having to drive them around and show them 3 or 4 houses.
It's much more convenient, it sounds like.
Right. So what you say is, now that you have the pre-approval and they know the market it's in, and you know the location, you know how much they can afford, you know the condition they're looking in, you're going to go in and you're going to use a system called RPR that comes with your Stratus, your MLS membership. It's a free program that comes from the National Association of Realtors, and you're going to use that to show the houses.
Online, virtually.
Yes, correct.
Awesome.
I am going to send you a link to a training on YouTube that actually shows how to do that.
Okay, perfect.
Unfortunately, since you're not licensed, you won't be able to get MLS memberships. You won't be able to play with RPR yet. But the first thing you'll do when you do get that is get your membership, learn how to use the system, and learn how to use RPR so you can start using it to qualify buyers.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Sounds great.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to send you that link. I'm going to send you the list of questions. And then when we meet next time, next week, maybe, we'll take any questions you have about the whole thing.
Okay.
We'll review it. I might actually even do a little live RPR with you,
Okay.
show you how you would lead them through it. And then we'll go to the next step, which would be showing the houses itself.
Perfect. So when you walk me through the RPR, are you gonna like show me as you would be showing a potential buyer?
Yes.
Perfect. I love it.
How's that sound?
Sounds great. So I
Okay.
would like to, if it's convenient for you, at least have training once a week. If not, maybe twice. It's up to you.
Okay. So next week is a little bit different because I'm going to take vacation time for a family reunion we have.
Okay.
So I have 5 sisters and a brother, and we get together for a week at my mom's house.
That's so cool. Okay. Love it.
So the only day that I would be free to do it next week is Thursday. I don't know if that works for you.
Yeah, it does. What time is good for you? And if you need to take a week off, that's completely okay as well.
Yeah. So let me just check the date.
Okay.
Yeah. So later in the afternoon, like again, this time 4 or 4:30 probably would work.
Okay.
I have 2 other appointments I have to schedule, one of which at a $3 million listing.
Ooh, that sounds like a good meeting.
Yeah. So I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm hoping that it's going to be early Thursday afternoon. Depends on when I call the owner on Monday, what his schedule is like. And then we're going to pencil it in for 4:30 on Thursday.
Okay. And if something doesn't work out, just let me know. It's completely fine.
No problem. The other possibility that we could do is either Friday or Saturday morning, first thing, like
That works.
8 o'clock and 8:30, that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm up early, so if it
Which
doesn't work,
one would be better for you?
either one really. I'm up pretty early every
Okay.
day.
I'm going to pencil you in for 4 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay.
And I will know by Monday afternoon what my schedule is going to be. And if it doesn't get filled up, I'd rather just do it on Thursday. But we can always fall back to like Friday morning at 8.
Okay. It sounds good.
Sounds like a plan?
Yeah.
In the meantime, do not hesitate to text, email, or call me with any questions you have about the stuff.
Okay.
And as I said, I'll follow up with sending you those 2 things, the questionnaire, the survey that you're going to talk to them about, and then the YouTube RPR training.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, John.
Okay, you have a
All
good
right.
day.
You too. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.